welcome back. We're ready for the second step of our glass heart. So everything's set up as before. Here's my heart. Now what we want to do is we want to do that magic trick where we close one eye and squint the other. And before we start with our thicker colors and our lighter paint, we're going to go back and see if there's anywhere where the heart is not dark enough and or not bright enough. So right off the bat, I see my brights are not bright enough. So I'm going to come back and reglaze these parts, because the more layers you put on, the brighter the color will be. Now glazing, like we're doing it today, can only be done on a dry painting. So I'll usually work on 2 or 3 paintings at once. So while one's drying, the other's ready to go. So remember that, to glaze, it's wet over dry. What's underneath needs to be dry first. Okay, so I am going to look to brighten up all my brightest reds first. So first, if you're mixing reds, it's absolutely critical that there be no blue on your brush. So make sure you have a clean brush. Actually, this brush is still giving off blue, so I think I'm going to trade to one I know is cleaner. Okay, I'll just use that. All righty, let's mix it. I'm calling that, well, my 2 reds are the quinacridone red and the cad red light. Mix them together in a little puddle with some Neo McGilp and do a color run. It looks like I am in the right family. Just add a tiny bit of medium, run a check. Yeah, that looks fine. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Maybe I'll start up here. See how much brighter it makes it? It's hard for people to understand how difficult it is to make colors that are light and bright, like this heart. So in the normal way of painting, this bright red is kind of a middle value. In other words, if 1 is white and 10 is black, this bright red probably falls on the light side value-wise, like a 4 or maybe a 5. But if I want something bright and yet light, how do I do that? Because the only way to make it light is to add white. But the second I add white, then it's no longer bright. This is the oil painter's dilemma. This is what glazing answers. These thin, transparent layers are so much brighter than any other way to apply and mix paint. The same is true of the darkest darks. Think about it. What if you have something that's really dark, appears black, maybe a blue black or a red black, but black, and it has a temperature. It's either warm or cool black. How the heck do you make it black enough? Because every time you add more black, it will take the temperature, it'll take the color away. Only through glazing can you get something that's dark enough to read as black, but still has strong enough color for you to see the black as either warm or cool. In other words, a black with a little blue in it, or a black with a little reddish orange. So you see how easy it is to scrub on these colored glazes. It's really, glazing is easy to understand and easy to do as long as the layers underneath are dry. Okay. It looks to me like it continues right on into the shadow area, so I'm going to paint that as well. Something like that. Looks like a super red. Goes here. And before we move on to the lighter colors, I want to look at my darks and see if there's anywhere where it needs to be darker, and if so, what temperature? Would that be a warm dark or a cool dark? You be thinking about that. And let's start right in here. Right here in the shadow area, it looks to me like the deep red almost looks greeny a little bit. So I'm going to take that strong red, kick it down a few notches with my cad green. Color check. Ooh, I went too far. It is not quite that green. Back it up, add more red. Try again. Oh yeah, I'm in the family. Paint her in. Check your edges. Keep going. Looks like this dark turns that color right here at the end. Glaze right over that dark. Okay. Looks like something's wrong up there. I think I've got a drawing problem. Never rest on your laurels. You can always improve the drawing as you go along. So whenever you see something not quite right, come back and fix it. Okay. Looks like a strong, oops, got kind of that dirty brown in there, what's meant to be strong red. So I'm going to pull out that dirty brown, make sure I got it off my brush, fill that in. Okay. Any other dark or medium tones that I'm missing? I think this area right here could use some work. Looks like I'm going to take my quinacridone red and scrub it right here. Looks like it turns to a pretty deep red before it does anything else. Okay, and then add that deep reddish purple that we saw before. Let's see. Oops. There we go. Okay, that looks about right, but that glaze got ever so slightly opaque. I can't see through it. You'd be surprised how that changes the way the color looks. I'll pop back here with a little Q-tip. Make sure I get that out before I forget. Okay. Up here, it's like strong middle tone. Put it in, maybe ever so slightly take away so it doesn't look quite so opaque. That edge is soft. For your sake, I'll try to do this with a brush, because I think if I were starting out again today, I might wear gloves or try not to get into the habit of using the finger as a blender. But in my own defense, I will tell you that as long as I have no cuts on my hands, and as long as I don't eat it, I really can't be hurt by getting paint on my hands. Read the label. It'll let you know if the brand you're using is making a color that contains lead. Okay. I want to go deeper into that shadow. I feel like mine is just kind of not deep enough right there in the middle. Okay. Let's switch to a slightly bigger brush. There we go. This will work. Gonna do quinacridone red, little ultramarine, see what we get. Okay, that's a wild stab at that color right there. I'm gonna hold the brush so the end is right over the color that I'm, yes, perfect color match. I don't know if you guys can see that, but the end of the brush disappears into the color. So I know I'm right on the money. Okay, remember, gather up more paint. Generally, people do too many brush strokes with the one load of paint. You want to make sure each brush stroke has the proper amount. So go back and add paint much more often than you think is necessary. Okay, add a little touch of it right there. Another little touch there. Okay, looks like this comes down more like that. Okay. Finishing what I started, right in the middle of it, I saw my color went really good somewhere else, and I wanted to put it in before I forgot about it. But now, back in business here in the shadow. Okay. Now, out here at the end, it looks like it turns into like a pale grayish lavender. So I'm going to try to find that color, and then I'll blend the two tones together. Okay, what is it? Oh, it's brown. I'm going to start with transparent red earth. Try adding a little manganese blue to that. This is my wild stab. I can see already it's wrong, but how it's wrong I'm going to figure out here. Ooh, more purple. So I think that means add more of the quinacridone. Add quinacridone red. I hadn't added any yet. Okay. That's in the ballpark. Okay, a little bit of my medium. And away we go. Ooh, that's a little dark. Well, I'll be thinning it out. I think it will work. Remember, because it's a glaze, we don't want to add white to our pigment. When you can glaze with white, you know, a color mixed with white, but the less white, the better. White has a tendency to glaze in a way that looks kind of cloudy. So we try to do most, if not all, of our glazing without adding white, and using colors that don't have white mixed in already. For instance, cadmium yellow is one of the lightest colors that has no white mixed with it. Whereas if any of you have the Naples yellow, you can see that color has quite a lot of white in it. And even though it's light coming out of the tube, it wouldn't glaze very well. Okay, maybe not loving where I am right there, but for now, it'll do. Okay, soften here and there. Trim where you think you went too far. Okay, we're ready for the next step. The next step is going to be using thicker paint and focusing on the lighter values of the painting. Let me, you know, I see little things, I gotta correct them before they dry. So take a minute and fix what I just saw. Okay. When dealing with the lighter areas, we switch brushes, the lighter areas of the still life and the lighter colors that we're going to mix. You switch from a filbert brush, which is rounded on the ends, to a flat or a bright. The only difference between a flat and a bright is the bright is shorter, but they are both squared off at the end. And as I said, if you look down the end of the brush like that, you should see a fine chisel point. So you'll be able to use this brush to make all kinds of marks. Now, I'm not going to be able to put every light I see in that painting, so I'm going to try to focus on just the ones that stand out the most. So what I do is close one eye and squint the other, and when I do that, I see the primary white being around the heart. I don't immediately see the little highlights in the heart. So I'm going to start with them. And further, I've noticed that the background at the top almost seems yellowish white, and the background at the bottom looks almost purplish white. So I guess I'll start down here with the purple. I'll mix the color as closely as I can with the colors I have available. And I'll add just a touch of my medium and none of my Gamsol. So first you get yourself a puddle of white. I said I was going to start below, so I want to mix just a tiny, tiny bit of a bluey purple. And I think that's going to be, yeah, it's going to be the ultramarine blue with Kiss It with quinacridone red. Get it well mixed. When you will notice when you're painting that a lot of time your paint travels up the bristles to the base. This metal piece is called the ferrule, and your wet paint will do you no good if it's all stuck there. To get it back at the end of your brush, you do a little action like this. You pull and twist, and that takes paint off of there and pushes it back. Usually you can't make more than 1 or 2 brush strokes before refilling your brush with paint. So be aware of that. It's a common rookie error to make too many brush strokes before refilling, and it makes the brush strokes mix in too much with what's underneath. So don't do that. Getting up a nice amount here. Touch of neomegalite, pull it. It keeps catching up around the ferrule. There we go. Okay. Gonna come in, lay that opaque color down. It's the first opaque color that we've laid in there. It should be really different. Now don't worry, I agree that the edge there between the light and the dark is quite soft, but we'll start out sharp. We'll soften it in a minute. Okay. So here we're painting negative shape primarily, but as I said, it doesn't matter if it's an actual thing or just air. If it's the biggest, most dominant thing I see when I close one eye and squint the other, that's what I paint. I'm going to change the edge here because I'm seeing now that my drawing was a little off right there. Never hesitate to make a correction. It's oil paint. You can do it. You can fix almost anything. I rarely abandon a painting. Most often, leave it overnight, come back the next day, and I can fix it. Okay. Looks like there's a neat arrangement of little purpley white shapes up there. Even though the brush is this big, you see how easily it gets into those tiny little spaces. Okay. Now, people have degrees of how thick and opaque they want their paint to be. I tend to paint on the thin side, so my opaque colors, they don't stand out much physically. But, I mean, there's me, and then there's somebody who is more like Van Gogh, have more clearly thick, defined brush strokes. So these are thick and opaque, but yeah, I'm no Van Gogh. Okay, and then it turns kind of yellowy as it moves up. And I think it gets slightly darker there at the bottom. So I add a little more pigment to my white to express that at the very bottom, what's happening. Something like that, probably. Let's get a little darker. And that probably goes up, and then it turns yellowy white. I'll worry about the yellow white up there. I think I better deal. This looks so funky, it's bothering me. Come back and soften that edge. I feel a lot better already. Come back, soften that one. Soften the end. This is why I love oil paint. It's so easy. People tell me often that they're intimidated by it. I've never understood that. Okay. Happy with that for now. I think at any point you can go backwards. If you see something that's bugging you that you have already done, do not hesitate to add another layer in that area. Like right now, I'm bugged by the edge between the shadow and the heart. It looks like there is a very strong shadow, strongly red, that I just have missed somehow. So I'd like to put it in now. There it is. So I'm trying to make it really clear, like 1, 2, 3, 4 step process, but don't hesitate to, do step 4 or do step 2 3 times if you need to. Doesn't matter how many times you repeat the process or go back to pick something up that you missed.